We understand how dependent we are on others and how for countless lifetimes they've taken care of us and we've been the recipient of great kindness from them. When this understanding comes into our heart, then we do not want to harm others. And our wish not to harm others manifests in our thoughts, our words, and our actions. And that wish not to harm others, as it manifests outwardly, affects other living beings and creates a very good feeling in society, creates harmony. Our speech becomes powerful and influential because people can trust it. So we especially abandon lying, saying things that are false, that lead others in the wrong direction, give them misinformation, and create a lot of argument in society. We abandon offensive speech that's going to hurt other people's feelings. Sometimes when we look back at our track record regarding our speech, there are untruths, outright lies, and definitely speech motivated by the intention to hurt. But when we really cherish others and care about their welfare, then we make a concerted effort to avoid such speech. And in that way, we save the people around us from so much dispute, so much hurt, so much wasted time and energy. So although we cannot manage the speech of others in society, we can manage our own. And that is our contribution to the welfare of the people around us. So it's important not to take the bad example of others and say, well, that legitimizes me speaking harshly and lying. Because when we come back to seeing ourselves as the recipient of kindness, then, we just don't want to do that. That's it. So that wish to abandon harming right here and now is a powerful impetus that we can expand upon and magnify and stretch to influence so many other areas of our life and areas of our practice, areas of our relationship with others and with society. And eventually that wish not to harm will lead us, together with other causes and conditions, will lead us to generate bodhicitta. And with the bodhicitta motivation, then whatever we do becomes something beneficial for others, especially in the long term. So let's make that our motivation. Okay, so that motivation came from some of the things that are going on today, if you've read the news. And it's a way for us to learn from other people's bad behavior and to make a determination ourselves not to act in that way. And the root of that is really seeing the kindness of others and how much we depend on others. And, they say then we automatically, we want to repay kindness. And, we don't have the motivation to create suffering and to create pain in other people's minds. So that's important, yeah, because what we do influences others. Okay, so that's I'm trying to give some ways for people to think when you read the news. Yeah. And sometimes you can learn just as much about goodness from looking at the people that you admire, like we did the other night when we had the memorial service for our friend in Montana, and people were really inspired by her generosity as the stories were told that evening. So that can inspire us. And then also, sometimes when we see bad behavior, that can inspire us to do the opposite. Yeah. And help us make a very firm intention to do the opposite. So in that way, we can take everything as something that helps our practice. Okay. So, so one doubt came up when we were talking about the second quality of the Buddha's realizations, stable realizations, and how they, it's said that they supersede those of the Shravakas, the hearers and solitary realizers. And the question came up, which all of us had, but they've already realized emptiness, and their emptiness, the Shravakas, their Aryas, their realization is not going to disappear. So how can we say that somebody else's realization is more stable than theirs? Okay, so here's what the tradition says is, having realized the nature of the Four Truths, the Buddha can teach them accordingly, and these teachings have no contradiction between the earlier and the latter words, and no contradiction between what is stated explicitly and what is stated implicitly. So how this differs from that of the Shravakas is that this way of teaching is superior to theirs, because the Shravakas may have realized the nature of the Four Truths, but there may be contradictions or unclarity in their way of explaining the meaning of it. So that's how the Geshes answer the question. You can think about it yourself, okay, if that makes sense. Okay, then regarding the whole thing with the hungry ghosts, And, okay, so the main abode of the hungry ghost is a place called King's Palace, which is located 500 yojanas beneath Jambu Ling. Okay. A yojana is, what is it? I can't remember if it's one a handspan or if it's a certain number of handspans. Anyway, that's the unit of measurement. So it's located under, Jambuling is the continent we live on. So this is according to ancient Indian cosmology. Okay. And so in one of the lands, there's somebody, there's the Lord of Death. Okay, his name is Yamaraja. And he's said to live in the abode of the hungry ghost. And that's seven layers beneath the earth. So I think there must be different layers of hungry ghosts or different layers of hell beings there. Okay, so due to being projected there by non-virtuous karma, Yamaraja has the body of a hungry ghost, but due to virtuous completing actions, he experiences the glory of the gods. Okay, so this is a thing how you can have one result that is the result of non-virtuous throwing karma, which is the one that determines the body and the realm you're born into, but have experienced the result of virtuous completing karma. The completing karma is the conditions of that we live in. Okay, so our kiddies are a good example. Non-virtuous throwing karma, that they're born in a lower realm, virtuous completing karma, in that, they live better than some human beings. Okay, so the same thing with Yamaraja. Okay, and then a little bit more for those interested in hungry ghosts. And by the way, not all hungry ghosts have the big bellies and thin necks and run around looking for food and such. The realm of hungry ghosts includes a lot of different types of beings, different spirits, different, kind of beings. So not all of them are like that, okay? It's a lot of variety. So they say that there's 36 types of hungry ghosts. I guess this comes from the Abbey Dharma. And they're broadly divided into three groups: those with external obstructions, so external obstructions, you can't find the food, or you live in a place where there's just constant disharmony. Internal obstructions, okay, even you find the food, you can't eat it, or in response to the violence you see around you, your own mind becomes violent and hostile. And then the third is those with obstructions to food and drink. Okay, so, internal obstructions can kind of go with some of those who can't find food and drink, but the ones who experience external and internal obstructions have also other kind of obstructions that bother them. And what I think of a lot when I think of this is sometimes we meet people who, they just have, how do they say it, like a bad streak in them. Yeah, we talk about people like that are violent for no reason, or, even as kids, they like torturing animals and, this kind of thing. So that mental state, these people are not from that realm, but I think of that mental state and how much somebody can be tortured by being constantly suspicious of other people's motives, and so always being quite defensive and violent and striking before anything can happen because their mind is manufacturing so much negativity and harm coming at them that may not be there at all. And I think of beings born in a realm where that's kind of how they live. The environment pushes that behavior, and internally they have the predispositions for that. So when I think of that, I think it must be an incredibly horrible, painful rebirth, to walk around and always be suspicious of others, always be fearful, always, just being defensive all the time. So I think, when they talk about different spirits, I think that may be something similar to their mental state. Of course, exaggerated a lot because it's an actual rebirth like that. And like I said last week, beings born in these realms, there is experience of their body, the place they live, is as real to them as our experience of our body and the place we live. Yeah. And I say that because sometimes people say, oh, but these are just mental states. Well, if they're just mental states, then human realm is just a mental state. Yeah. But human realm is also a physical state, isn't it? We have bodies too. Of course, it comes back to our mind in the end. But, there is a shared external experience. Yeah. Of course, we can't pinpoint it. It's not inherently existent, but there is kind of some shared experience. So I think, it must be that way for these living beings as well. Yeah.
Venerable, someone in my safe group, the one that I facilitate, had some questions about the God realms. Mm-hmm. And she was wondering if there are demigods in all of the God realms, the desire, form, and formless, and if in all those realms they are in conflict with each other.
The demigods or the asuras are only in conflict with, I think, the first layer, but just the first level of them, not the higher ones. So not in the form and formless realms. Okay. So I am not an expert on all of this stuff. If you have questions on it, I recommend you read the Abbey Dharma, because it's better for me to teach about bodhicitta than to field questions about things that I don't know much about. Yes. Look it up, because I just said it's out. Somebody has it? Okay, what is it? What's the yojana? So this is very important information. Yes, you can use it, when we build the Buddha Hall. But the problem is you have to figure out whose arm span. Okay.
This is from Venerable Losong. And I've asked him for his source. He hasn't replied yet. He said a yojana is said to be the distance a yoked team of oxen can travel in one day, approximately 8 miles.
Whoa. Okay, I thought it was measured in handspans. What? 8 miles? Okay.
That's something else.
Yeah, but I thought there were certain... Paxe? No. Okay, yeah, anyway, now we know it's 8 miles. Okay, don't forget it and don't ask me again. Because I'll forget. So you remember it, then you don't have to ask. And then when I forget, you can respond. Those are the kinds of things I don't hold in my mind very well. Okay, so where we left it yesterday, we were on verse 4 last week. That said, the leisures and endowments are very hard to find. Since they accomplish the purposes of beings, if I do not accomplish benefit upon this, how will I acquire this in the future? And so I was going through the 8 freedoms and 10 fortunes, and we got partway through the 10 fortunes, right? So I think we got through the first 5, which are the fortunes having to do with oneself personally, and we're on the latter 5, which are in the society around us. So these are from the Sravaka Bhumi by Sangha. Yeah, and the 8 freedoms were from Nagarjuna's letter to a friend. Okay, so the last 5 are that the Buddha has appeared, 1, on this earth, because there isn't always a wheel-turning Buddha present in any place or any time period. So we're fortunate in that Shakyamuni Buddha appeared 2,500 years ago. We didn't get to meet him personally, but he appeared. And then the second of the 5 is that he taught the Dharma. And the third is that the lineage of the teachings has endured and has come down to us. Okay, so that's a very special opportunity if we're born in a world system where there's no wheel-turning Buddha, where like with the solitary realizer, they're not Buddhas, but they teach by their gestures and all. We may not get all of the teachings. And then especially if the teachings did not last a long time and didn't come down to us. And remember when we were studying Vinaya, I think it was Ananda or Shariputra asked the Buddha why some of the previous Buddhas, their dispensation didn't last a long time. And the Buddha replied, because they didn't teach the Vinaya. And so, that's one of the precious things about the Vinayas, that it enables the dispensation, the sasana is the Sanskrit word, to exist for a long time. So we're fortunate in that aspect. Then 4th is that those who are following it. So there exists a Sangha community, there exists teachers, and again, very fortunate. So here, the existence of the Sangha community again refers to the monastics, and there's a place where people can go to learn the Dharma. There's people who have devoted their life to studying and practicing it, and so it's possible for us to learn the teachings. Yeah, and so here I think, what would have happened if, the Buddha taught, the teachings were passed down, and there were all these teachers and everything in Tibet. And, how are we supposed to meet them? Us kids who grew up with Mickey Mouse in the US, how are we going to meet these teachers? Yeah. And so here, sometimes His Holiness and Lama Yeshe also refer to the kindness of Mao Zedong for enabling them to come out and meet more people. And in Lama Yeshe's case, he said it really helped him learn what practicing the Dharma meant. But from that tragedy of the Tibetan diaspora, we benefited by being able to meet these people. Yeah. And when you think of different communist countries that were much more closed, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there was really very difficult for them to meet the teachers, even though there might have been teachers there. I mean, even in Vietnam, there were so many excellent teachers, but you have a situation of warfare, and how very difficult to learn and practice. Yeah. And then, so that's the fourth. And then the fifth is that there's the affectionate kindness of and compassion of others, which means that there's people who are benefactors and support us in our practice. Because you see that if the Sangha had to put on lay clothes and go out and get a job, again, then that impinges on the ability to learn, think about, meditate, and teach the Dharma. And that impinges on other people being able to learn Dharma and the spread of the Dharma in the society. So the role that benefactors and supporters play in the existence of the Dharma is really enormous, because otherwise you wouldn't have people who could go on long meditation retreat, or people who could just thoroughly study the teachings or whatever. Yeah. So these are the five fortunes that we have as part of the 10 fortunes. These are the five that come from society. Okay. So then, if we go back to that verse, the freedoms and fortunes are very hard to find. So why are they hard to find? Well, it's hard to create the cause. Yeah, first cause is ethical conduct. Boy, would you say that our society needs some work on ethical conduct? I used to roll my eyeballs years ago, and now it's hard even to keep your eyeballs in your head when you think of what's going on. Okay. Of course, years ago, I thought that my ethical conduct was okay. It was other people who were lying and other people who were cheating others, but not me, because my lies weren't lies, they were little white things done to prevent harm to others. So they were actually compassionate. Yeah. And cheating people, I didn't do that, These companies cheated us. So it was fine for us to take, to use their credit cards on long distance phone calls, this kind of thing. So, I thought I was pretty okay. And boy, did I have to do a lot of purification when I really started looking at my behavior. Yeah, but the general feeling in society nowadays is really quite sad. And, especially, I think, sad when people use religion to whip people up in anger. Yeah, because religion is what should be the calming, peaceful influence of society. So in Myanmar, when they use religion to strike against the Rohingyas, in this country, when they use, Jesus's words to create bad feelings and to validate all sorts of negative actions, that's not what religion's supposed to do. And I very often think that the founders of various religions would have a fit if they were seeing what people were doing in their name today. So it's hard to attain a human rebirth because the first cause is ethical conduct, and it's hard to create ethical conduct in this world. You have to be very clear and strong inside yourself, because the environment around us validates anger and all sorts of things in the name of our rights and our liberty and so on. Okay, another cause for precious, because the ethical conduct brings about the human rebirth part, then to have the other fortunes, we need a variety of different causes. So we need to practice generosity so that we have, there are people who benefact us and we don't live impoverished. It's difficult to practice if you're really impoverished. People's generosity in sharing teachings with us. We need to practice fortitude so that we're reasonably pleasing to see so that others don't kind of run away in horror. We need to practice joyous effort so that we can start something and finish it. Because Dharma practice is, it's going to take a long time. And even to study one text, we have to start it and finish it. To do one translation project, we have to start it and finish it. And you see some people who start many, many things because they're interested in many, many things. And nothing gets done, nothing gets completed. So that becomes a hindrance, even though we may have a precious human life. So joyous effort, enables us to finish what we start out. Yeah, we need to practice some concentration so that we can stay on track. And of course, practice wisdom so that we can see what to practice and what to abandon. Okay, so we need that. And then having created all that good karma, we need to dedicate it. Okay, and so the best is to dedicate it for full awakening. And then as a byproduct of that dedication, we'll have a precious human life in the future. Okay, so when it says, that these situations are very hard to find, the way to meditate on that is just to stop and, start with your own ethical conduct and review. Is it easy or difficult to keep good ethical conduct? Even now that we've, learned the 10 virtues and the 10 non-virtues, how much do we really adhere to them and how much do we kind of go around them? And then check the people around you, check society. Yeah, how many people are creating ethical conduct and then doing all the other types of virtuous actions that give the other conditions of a precious human life. Okay, and we begin to see, to have all those causes and conditions, it's really quite difficult. Because if you miss just one of the different causes, even though you may have created all the others and you experience the fortune of all the others, lacking that one prevents you from practicing even though you have everything. Okay, it's kind of what would be a good example. You're baking a cake and you have all the ingredients except sugar. Well, it's wonderful you have the ingredients, all the ingredients. But if you're missing sugar, it's not going to, be the same kind of cake. It's not going to be a cake at all. Okay, so. The ability to create all these causes and conditions, very rare to do that. Yeah. And then also by number, when we compare the number of people with precious human lives to all the other beings in samsara, it's like, hardly anybody, because the lower realms, many, many more beings. This is the year the country's doing the census. If they do a census in the lower realms, huge number of denizens. Okay, hungry ghosts, enormous numbers, animals. I mean, could you imagine doing a census of the ants on our property? Yeah, you've been seeing all the ants? The ants plus the wasp, plus the ticks, just even the insects on this. We are outnumbered. Yeah? So just even getting the human body part of it numerically, very difficult. Okay. So they make the example, and the example I think is in Nagarjuna's letter to a friend too, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it's in Letter to a Friend, and it's also in the sutras. So this is because this example comes in the Pali tradition too. Yeah, so it's an interesting way how things found in the Pali sutras enter into Tibetan Buddhism by way of the people who wrote the treatises, because they don't always share the same sutras per se in the two traditions, but the people who wrote the treatises that went into Tibet studied the scriptures from the 18 schools. So they may not have been the Pali scriptures, but the schools of the scriptures of all the 18 early schools were very similar. So they studied those and then wrote about them in their treatises and commentaries, which then went to Tibet. Because Buddhism went to Tibet many centuries after it went to Sri Lanka. So the scriptures that came were different, and how different, points were arrived in Tibet was different than how they arrived in Sri Lanka or in China because of that. Anyway, okay, so the example, what I'm trying to show is how there's a lot shared between the different traditions that we are often unaware of. Okay. So there's the example of they say a yoke. I think it's more like when you were little and you had those, what do you call them? When you went swimming and it was a little tube. Yeah, like an inner tube. But, we had the ones that were decorated with, little elephants and so on. Okay. So, there's a tube like that floating, in the Pacific Ocean, going here and there. The Pacific is larger than the Atlantic, but it's also more peaceful. In the Atlantic, the ring gets thrown around much, much more. So much more difficult to keep it stable. But in any case, you have a turtle who's blind, who can't see the ring. And he comes up for air once every 100 years. And this ring is buffeted around by the wind and the waves. And how often is the turtle going to come up and get his nose through the ring? Yeah, very difficult. Sometimes he and the ring will be in very different parts of the ocean. Other times, the ring's here and the turtle's just going to come up and hit the edge, but not go inside. Yeah. And when you really, it's an interesting analogy to meditate on. And you really get a feeling of, wow, it is difficult for this turtle to get its head through the ring. And they say that is easier than for us to get a precious human life. Okay. So these kind of similes or analogies can, when we really think about them, can be quite effective in generating, some feeling in our mind like this. Okay. So, if I do not accomplish benefit upon this precious human life, How will I acquire this again in the future? So if we take our life for granted and we don't create the causes to have a precious human life with all these opportunities in the future, then we won't have that kind of life and we won't have the same kind of opportunities that we have now. Yeah. And when you really think, when you've done some serious meditation on what samsara is and see how you have some feeling for the fortune we have now with our present life, and then you think of not having that fortune, and what's going to happen to you? Born here, born there, going up, going down, living in our same old crazy way that we did before we met the Dharma. Yeah, even we get a human rebirth, but then lots of times we may be born without a human rebirth. Maybe we're the queen ant, in our anthills out here. Maybe you're born as the queen ant. Yeah. Here you are, you're in a monastery, but you're a queen ant, or you're a worker ant, or you're the queen wasp, and somebody's, taking you out every so often and spraying that stinky right guard everywhere, preventing you from building your house. Yeah. And you think, taking life after life in that realm and another realm and another one and another one. And without learning the Dharma, without hearing the Dharma, then what can you do of value in any of those lives? Because the self-grasping is there, it's innate, it's very strong. And the self-centered mind is running rampant too. So, without the Dharma, we are really, really sunk. And not just in terms of this lifetime, but in terms of many, many, many future lifetimes. Yeah. So when you really think about that, what would it be like? Because this is actually our history. Yeah. This is our history. What we've done in samsara since beginningless time is go up and down like that. And, to keep on doing it without any opportunity to hear the teachings and practice them, then, very difficult in that situation, even to create the cause for good rebirth, let alone have all the conditions for precious human life. Yeah. So when you really think about it, it kind of rattles you. And that way of rattling us is good. Okay. We become concerned. We become afraid. That kind of fear is not the panicked fear of, it's like, oh my goodness, I need to be careful. Yeah. Because what I say and think and feel and do matters. And, I'm creating the cause for what I'm going to experience and what I'm going to become. And so I need to get my act in shape. Okay? So that, some of these initial motivations, well, all of the motivations through the, on the path, they're quite sobering when you really think about them. They're quite sobering. And that kind of sobriety, I find really helpful because it makes my mind just calm and it adds a certain kind of clarity. Yeah. So that instead of, ooh, what can I get that's going to make me happy? And ooh, I have to meet these people. And this is a pain in the neck. And my computer deleted more files. And, I worked so hard editing this manuscript. And then the computer didn't even save it. And, all that kind of stuff we get so wigged about. Yeah. Then that stuff doesn't mean anything to you anymore. So the mind becomes very peaceful. Yeah, it's amazing. It's sober. You're not giddy with happiness. But there's a kind of clarity there that's quite refreshing, I find. Yeah, that prevents the, oh, look at me, look what I get to do. This is so good. I'm so happy. And of course, all the agitation and irritation too. Okay. So that's verse 4. Verse 5. Okay. So now we're going into the section talking about the benefits of bodhicitta. And so how this is related to precious human life is, how do we take the essence of our precious human life? We have these freedoms and fortunes. How do we make our life meaningful? Well, the best way to make it meaningful is to generate bodhicitta. Okay. Now you may say, why bodhicitta? Bodhicitta I can't even get liberated by generating bodhicitta. And bodhicitta alone won't make me into a Buddha. Yeah. But if I realized emptiness, that way I could get out of samsara. So why do they say bodhicitta is the first thing to do to take the essence of my precious human life? Yeah. Why don't they say the wisdom realizing emptiness? Yeah. Anyway, it's so hard having love and compassion for all these sentient beings, And I'm really not too keen on giving my eyes and my hands for their benefit, especially when they just throw them away afterwards. Why do I have to give my body for the benefit of these ungrateful, uncooperative sentient beings who don't even keep good ethical conduct, who make a mess with everything? Yeah. Isn't realizing emptiness taking the essence of my life? Then I get myself out of samsara, one less being in samsara to bug everybody else. That's my compassion. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing, why does Shantideva say the essence of taking the essence of a precious human life is generating bodhicitta? Okay, so the next verses where he's talking about the benefits of bodhicitta will answer that question. Okay, so verse 5, just as a flash of lightning brightly illuminates for an instant within the clouds on a dark night, likewise in this world, through the might of the Buddha, merit and intelligence occasionally occur. It says once, but I wonder if it's for one, for us. Okay, so another nature analogy. If you're here in the summer when there's thunder and lightning storms, there was one, I forget which year it was, and everybody had left. I don't know whether you were all at everybody had gone to something. And I was the only one here. And there was a thunder and lightning storm, and it was right over us. It wasn't that way or this way where you have the lightning and then you can count to see how many miles away it was. The lightning and the thunder happened at the same time. And like right over, I was in the writing studio, right over there, Okay, it's pretty impressive, that lightning in a summer lightning storm. Okay, so it brilliantly illuminates the dark night, doesn't it? Yeah. But just for an instant. It doesn't last very long. Okay, so this is the analogy to how much virtue sentient beings create. Okay? That flash of lightning is so short. And in the same way, us having a virtuous intention and doing a virtuous action is likewise that short. Okay. Yeah. So Gyaltsabje says, just as one can see form very clearly for an instant when the dark clouded night sky is illuminated by a flash of lightning, that's if you're not cowering under the bed like the cats are. In the same way, for worldly beings, the wisdom that establishes virtue, thinking I have to act meritoriously, arises only occasionally. We don't have lightning storms all the time, and when we do, the lightning illuminates the sky very briefly. So sentient beings' thought, I have to act meritoriously, arises only occasionally, and beings do not possess such thinking continually. It's there and it's gone. For that reason, they always remain with little virtue. And similar to the dark clouded night sky, they have difficulty overcoming the strong negativities that cause rebirth in the lower realms. Worldly beings take rebirth in very fearful places, which should be understood as very dreadful times, and therefore one should strive to accomplish virtue and abandon negativity. Yeah? So our opportunity to create virtue is hard to come by. And even if we have that opportunity externally to have a virtuous thought is difficult. Okay, so like we're living here, right? Yeah, we have altars in our rooms and everywhere. How often do you make your own offerings on the altar in your room? How long does it take to offer water bowls? Yeah. I don't know, maybe 2 minutes, or to, take a snack and package it well so the bugs don't get it and offer it. And yet we can't get around to that. Yeah. So the opportunity's there, but we all often don't take it. Teachings are being held, but I really don't feel like going tonight. Yeah. And so we see that, having the mind that thinks I should create virtue is not so easy. It doesn't come automatically. We need to really sit and think about it. Yeah. So I think one thing that really helps is the fact that before all the different activities that we do here, we stop and somebody leads us in generating a motivation. And I know sometimes for me when we do this, I don't know if it's for you, but sometimes I think this motivation, you can tell the person doesn't really mean it. They're just saying some words and they're ad-libbing right now. Yeah. Do you ever think like that when somebody's cultivating a motivation? Or is it only me? Yeah. So then my mind goes, why are we cultivating these motivations before everything anyway? Because, half the time people don't really mean it. But then when I think of not hearing those motivations or not doing the chanting, before lunch or before meals or whatever, then I realize what an effect it is having on my mind to do those things, even if the other person may be saying them totally seriously, but my mind is thinking they're just saying blah, blah, because my mind is blah, blah. Actually, my mind is just blah. It doesn't get around to the second blah. So it's still having quite a big influence on the mind, to have the stand-up meeting every morning, the monastic prayer every morning, chanting before breakfast, chanting before lunch, chanting after lunch, saying the offering service prayer, motivations before teachings, motivations, before you take out the chainsaw, motivations before you take out the vacuum cleaner, but then you begin to see, boy, this is influencing my mind in some way and reminding me of the importance of creating virtue. And so maybe, some thought of I should create virtue will arise easier in my mind because of hearing this all the time. Yeah. So don't put down the little things. They can be quite important, I think, over the long term. Okay. So merit and intelligence occasionally occur. So not so often. Okay. So now, so that's the verse explaining the reason to abandon negativities and create virtue. So we definitely have to purify. That's coming in the text. Okay, then the next virtue is about how explaining the benefits of bodhicitta, and here its potential to destroy negativities and accomplish virtue. So it's important to create virtue, abandon negativity. That's verse 5. Verse 6 is, here's how bodhicitta will help you do it. Okay. So let's see how these verses. I forgot. Verse 6a. Okay, verse 6, the first line, hence virtue is perpetually feeble. So that actually goes with verse 5, the explanation for verse 5. But, I think I made the point when I was talking because, lots of times our thing for virtue is kind of half-hearted. And I think I told you about, having to force myself to be generous when I lived in Dharamsala. I mean, not only there, but many instances where I really have to, give myself a good talking to in order to be able to give some impermanent, transient material object that I'm not going to have forever anyway, to give it away. Yeah. That's how, the mind can be really tough. You think is your mind tough sometimes? You know that you should say something or do something in a different way or think in a different way. You know it. It's very clear. And your mind says, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah. And then you have to say to your mind, but don't you remember the teachings? And here's the benefit of doing that. And it's not going to hurt you. And, there's so much benefit. And your mind is still like this this petulant little child going, it's too much energy. And often the only energy it is changing how we think. We don't even have to lift a finger. It's just changing the thought. But our mind says, it's too hard. It's too much energy. I don't want to do it. Okay, hence virtue is perpetually feeble. Yeah. So I think it might be good, if we sometimes share some stories of how we have to work with this petulant child. Yeah. One of my friends told me that, she wanted to do a daily practice, and it was, she'd get up in the morning and then, I'm going to go sit. No, let's have a cup of coffee. Let's read this. Let's do that. Da, 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 da. And she said it was like having a baby. Her mind was like a baby, totally uncooperative and crying. And that she decided to then talk to her mind the way you would talk to a baby, in a compassionate way. So she would talk to herself and she would say, I know you feel like sleeping a little longer, and I know you'd like a cup of hot tea, but that's not what we're going to do now. We're going to go sit on the meditation cushion now, and you can have your cup of hot tea later. And that's the way she would talk to her mind, because it's being like a petulant child to get the kid to do what you want it to do.
It happened recently, and it was kind of a big blow. Luckily, we had a safe class, and that saved me. But so we had our stand-up meeting, and somebody it was not a complaint. It was a comment about something that wasn't done right, which I had happened to. I was the one who did it, and so it's like, okay, here is yet another instance of somebody complaining about something that I did. And now I'm going to have to work with my mind so I can forgive this person and smile at her the next time I see her. And then I'm going to have to really take her comment seriously and try not to do it again next time. And do I want to do that? No. In fact, I just want to do the entire opposite thing so I can bug her again. And no, I am not going to work on forgiveness because I've worked on forgiveness for so long already.
Yeah, that's the way it is, isn't it? Yeah. So there we are. Okay. Then the rest of verse 6. The great power of negativity is horrible, except for a mind of complete awakening. By what other virtue will it be overcome? Or in here, hence virtue is perpetually feeble. I think this person referred to this translation. This great strength of immorality being extremely intense, and except for a fully awakening mind, by what other virtue will it be overcome? Very interesting, yeah, because this was the first translation. So this person, I think, looked at it and then changed the things that they thought could be improved. Okay, so the great power of negativities, yep, it's there, and it will sweep us along and cause us to be born in horrible situations and horrible rebirths. Remember, nobody's punishing us. This is just a result of our own actions. Okay? So when we see that kind of negativity and the kind of result it brings, what other kind of virtuous mind is going to be strong enough to oppose that and to purify that. Yeah, because to purify an action, you have to, one of the 4 opponent powers is having a totally different motivation towards whoever it was that you harmed. So what other motivation is going to be that powerful to be the opposite of whatever motivated our harmful act? It's not going to be, some kind of wimpy of, well, they're a nice person, I should be nice back. It's got to be something powerful. And so that's what bodhicitta is. It's an extremely powerful, virtuous mind. Why? What makes it so powerful? Yeah. So this is something really to think about, and it'll come here. I'll give you a preview. Why is it so powerful? First of all, it it's the highest intention that we can have in life. The most noble or magnificent intention to become a Buddha in order, first of all, to become a Buddha, because that's the complete actualization of all of our potential. And second of all, to do it for the benefit of sentient beings. And to want to do it for the benefit of sentient beings means we're going to have to work really hard on that mind that doesn't want to cooperate, like you just illustrated. Yeah. So we can see it's an incredible mind that not only just because of its qualities of full realization, full abandonment, cherishing sentient beings more than oneself, but also because of its potential to do good in the world. It's quite a powerful intention. Yeah. And not only that, we generate it towards each and every living being, and living beings are countless. We can't finish counting them. And it pertains to all of them, every single one, okay? So every single wasp and yellow jacket, every single, I won't say their names. Yeah, certain people in Washington, certain people around the world who cause suffering on multitudes of people by their power, their wish for power. Yeah. The fact that of how radical of a change it is from our normal afflictive mind, which thinks only about me. Bodhicitta thinks about others. I'm one. Bodhicitta thinks about countless beings. My happiness now. Bodhicitta thinks about others' happiness for eons in the future. Yeah? So you can see it's just about the opposite in every way from our ordinary mind. Because the mantra of our ordinary mind is, it, I want what I want when I want it. Okay? And bodhicitta is the total opposite of that one. Okay? So when we can see the destructive power of I want what I want when I want it, then we can get a feeling for the incredibly powerful virtue of bodhicitta and that intention. Okay. So, except for that kind of mind aspiring for complete enlightenment for everybody's benefit, what other kind of virtue can overcome all of the negativity that I've created for countless eons? Yeah, we need something pretty strong. Yeah, taking a Tylenol after surgery isn't going to work. Yeah, but don't take oxycodone either. Maybe we should take, we should generate a bodhicitta that's like oxycodone, that's totally addictive, that our mind can't let go of. Okay? Something powerful. So, if you want to be addicted to bodhicitta. And then you can go to Bodhisattvas Anonymous that encourages your addiction. Yeah. Okay. Then another benefit is it gives us the potential to accomplish supreme bliss. So this is verse 7. All the lords of subduers means Buddhas because they've subdued their mind. All the lords of subduers who have contemplated for many eons have seen it to be beneficial, for by it, the immeasurable masses of beings will easily attain the supreme happiness. So we always want something that's going to bring supreme happiness to all beings. That's what Christmas cards are all about, is wishing everybody to have instant, supreme, everlasting happiness. Okay? What has the power to bring that about? Maybe not instant, but to bring about the supreme happiness that will last for a long time. Bodhicitta has that power. So if we generate bodhicitta, then the way we relate to other beings changes, and we're able to influence them in a really powerful way by the power of our intention. Okay? So the bodhicitta helps us attain awakening, through which we can benefit sentient beings more effectively. It helps us influence sentient beings on the path because of the power of that mind. And it helps us progress on the path and clear away our obstacles to becoming Buddhas. Okay? So the bodhicitta works in many, many ways to benefit us so that we can benefit others, and it works in ways so that we benefit others directly. Okay? So it's quite powerful in how it works. So interesting, spend some time in your meditation thinking about this, and think about people who, in your eyes, are extraordinary in terms of the love and compassion they have and the way they are able to inspire you and inspire others on the path. And so think about these people and their qualities, and then think, what would it be like to have those qualities? And then think, what kind of mind is it that would bring about those qualities in me? Yeah. Okay. So we may say, well, you're thinking of somebody and they don't get angry a lot. They have a mind that, can put up with almost anything, and to forgive others for being obnoxious. Now, what do I need to develop to be like that? Well, fortitude. But also, what needs to lie behind that fortitude is bodhicitta, because I really need to have love and compassion for others in order to want to generate that fortitude, as your story so aptly demonstrated. Yeah. I don't want to forgive them. Yeah. Why should I forgive them? They should forgive me. Yeah. Actually, I didn't do anything wrong. They don't need to forgive me. They should apologize to me. They gave me the wrong instructions, and now I'm getting blamed for following the instructions that somebody else gave me. And they're not getting blamed for it. I am. And it's unfair. And I'm going to get my AK-47 and go demonstrate in front of the Capitol and say that my rights are being impinged upon. Okay. So that's verse 7. Yeah. So, for by it the immeasurable masses of beings will easily attain the supreme happiness. Questions, comments? We just have a few minutes for this.
Last week in the teachings, you were unpacking Nagarjuna's letter to a friend. And for the first time, I heard being born as a barbarian. You know, usually in the Lam Rim, in Foundation of Buddhist Practice, it's being born in a barbaric land. But thinking of being a barbarian, which I have been, and in moments still am, was very impactful. Because if you're born in a barbaric land, well, you know, it's all those other people.
Yeah.
But being born as a barbarian.
Yeah.
Okay, so someone asked, do you recommend lay practitioners have an individual teacher to study under? With thousands of teachings online, it can feel a bit confusing on where to study, even with 5 years of consuming Dharma.
I think if you're able to make a student-teacher relationship with a specific person that you know, it's very powerful. Yeah. Online teachings are really good, but compared to knowing your teacher in person, yeah, and receiving teachings from them in person, you know, I would go for everything possible you can do in person and use the internet as a backup for that. Or if you can't do anything in person, then, you know, of course, rely on the internet for everything. But there's a huge difference when you meet a real live human being who's practicing and can, even there's thousands of students. I mean, you go to His Holiness Dalai Lama's teachings, there's thousands of them, you know. His Holiness isn't going to know us personally. But you sit there and listen to somebody directly, you know, in a crowd of people who all want to direct their minds towards something virtuous. And it has a very powerful effect on us. Okay. So getting His Holiness online is second best, but if you can do it in person, that's really the way to go. Okay.
And the other question is, there are many Abhidharma books online. What can you suggest for a beginner?
Woo. Abhidharma is not the most sit down in a comfy chair and read type of book. It's yeah, it's very detailed. It's very analytical. So it depends what part of Abhidharma you're interested in. Okay? Because Abhidharma covers many topics. It covers, you know, the realms of existence. It covers karma. It covers, what else? How the mind works, all the different mental factors, all the different kinds of karma, all the different sentient beings in the universe. So, you know, it depends what thing in particular you're interested in. And then there are often smaller books that are easier to understand that explain those specific topics. Okay. Anything else? But what I recommend for people beginning the Dharma study is His Holiness's Library of Wisdom and Compassion. I think start with that. Yeah. Or if that's too long, start with Open Heart, Clear Mind, and use How to Meditate as a companion book to teach you meditation. Okay, so we'll stop here.